About 8 years ago, Way of the Samurai 3 was released in Japan for the PlayStation 3, with Western localizations arriving the following year. Developed by Acquire, the third game in the series arrives on PC thanks to Ghostlight. It's been less than a year since the Way of the Samurai series made its debut on PC with Way of the Samurai 4. While it is a bit unusual for games to be ported in a reverse order, I imagine fans won't mind. While going in, I had the least experience with the third game, but to many followers, Way of the Samurai 3 is considered to be the best edition. Unfortunately, the game isn't very kind to new players. When you first start the game, you'll be asked to create a samurai. Initially, you won't have very many options to choose from, but as you continue playing, you'll start to earn samurai points that unlock more heads and outfits. Eventually, you'll even be able to take on the look of any NPC if you so choose. Your samurai then becomes the lone survivor of a recent battle. As you're wandering the battlefield wounded, you're quickly presented with the crux of the game, freedom of choice. I said in my Way of the Samurai 4 video that the game was like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books, and that holds true for this game as well, maybe even more so. You have the freedom to interact with the town of Amana as you see fit. As you explore, you'll come across a number of factions vying for power. Peaceful farmers who just want the fighting to stop, vengeful samurai, and assassins. It's up to you who you want to side with, if anyone, as the game has a total of 22 endings. While that sounds impressive, and it is, do know that some of them are just variations of one another, with slight but meaningful differences. Just an example of how much freedom you have, one of the endings tasks you with killing every NPC in the game. To kill all these NPCs, however, you'll need to know a bit about how combat works. This is where new players will run into some issues. You see, the game has no obvious tutorials for the player to learn the game, but there are a couple of places that you can go to learn. The first is an NPC at the start of the game being harassed by two thugs. If you dispose of them and talk to her, she'll help to explain the basics if you're ever confused. I'll add that the most basic thing you need to know is that any area on the map that has an exclamation mark has an inkling. These are essentially ways to progress the story down a specific path. If you complete enough of these, you'll reach an ending. The second tutorial is located at the dojo in the guard gate area. Here you can learn all of the advanced techniques for combat. The first time a new player fights an important NPC, they'll probably be confused as to why they can't guard some attacks, or why their own attacks are being deflected. This is part of the push-pull system that Way of the Samurai uses. If an enemy is blocking your basic attacks, you can move the analog stick or keyboard key towards the opponent to push their guard away, opening them up to attacks. If you find your own guard is being broken, it is because your opponent has pushed you. The way you can counter this is with a pull. This is where the colored icons over the enemy's head comes into play. If you're blocking, you'll see the circle go orange, the enemy is pushing you, and you need to pull. To do this, you simply move the analog stick away from your opponent. This will cause them to lose balance and again, open them up for attacks. If your opponent is guarding, their circle can go blue. This means that if you decide to push, you'll be pulled instead. Understanding this mechanic is key to your enjoyment with the game, which unfortunately is only taught to the player at the dojo. I highly recommend if you're going to play this game to go to the dojo and practice these mechanics. If you lose all of your health, simply return to your house to sleep and recover, then go back until you have it down. The final advanced technique you need to know about is the parry. If you press guard at the exact time that you're about to be hit, you will flash yellow and parry the enemy's attack. On weaker opponents, this opens up the ability to instantly kill them. This starts a QTE, or quick time event, where every weak opponent will move in to attack. For each right button that you press, you'll instantly kill your enemies until you screw up. This makes some of the larger fights go quite a bit quicker. For harder enemies, you won't be able to instantly kill them, but you can still parry their attacks, giving you the ability to reverse the flow of combat. As for the basics, you have your standard light and heavy attacks. Every weapon in the game has their own unique set of heavy attacks. Some of these are of course shared, but no two weapons will have the exact same moveset as another. Finding, or even building your own sword with your favorite moves can be pretty rewarding. You'll want to try out a variety of swords and stances to find one that suits your playstyle. Every weapon only starts with a few basic combos, however. The more you use it, the more combos that will unlock. Once you have a weapon that you're happy with, you'll definitely want to upgrade it at the blacksmith. There are 5 stats to a weapon. Attack, which dictates how much damage the blade will cause. Defense, which lowers how much damage it will take. Quality dictates how many times the sword can be upgraded. Weight will determine how fast your weapon will be. And durability is how long it takes before your weapon will break. To explain durability a bit, every time you attack an enemy or block, the silver gauge in the bottom left will start to fill red. This is sometimes referred to as the heat of your blade. If it ever fills all the way, one segment of the bar will break off. Once all of them have broken off, the blade will break and it'll need to be repaired. This creates an interesting dynamic where sometimes you'll want to end your combos early to prevent this, or to even drop your guard to take a hit in order to save your sword. I've always found this mechanic more interesting than the one that was in the 4th game. If you're curious about the quality of the PC port, you can expect about the same conversion as Way of the Samurai 4 got. The game is again locked at 30 frames per second. It's very unlikely that this will be fixed, as Way of the Samurai 4 never was, and the game's logic, things that dictates animation and if an attack landed or not, is directly tied to the frame rate. The option menu provides a few ways to customize the game, such as languages, hiding the game's UI, and a few unlockables such as blood color, or modifiers like blast, float, and invisible. These are fairly goofy, with blast causing hits to knock you away, and float lowering gravity when launched in the air. A small note, the map shortcut key is required to be held down to activate. Don't just press it thinking it doesn't work. Otherwise, you have simple resolution options with no way to modify the graphics in-game. You can, however, tweak a few things in the INI file. There are a few more options here, but the main ones that you want to look at are Enable DOF, Shadow Detail, and FOV. I know a lot of people don't like depth of field effects, so setting that to 0 will turn off the blur in the distance. Shadow Detail can range from 0 to 2, with 2 being the highest. FOV you can tweak to your liking. It essentially zooms the camera out a bit, but if you go too far, you'll get a fisheye effect that warps the edges of the screen. Some of you may notice that you can unlock the frame rate here, but in doing so it causes the game to be unplayable due to the issues mentioned earlier. The final 2 complaints I have deals with the draw distance and performance in game. For the draw distance, objects and NPCs clearly pop in as you're walking around. Most distracting, however, is how objects constantly change their level of detail as you get closer or further away. If you look at the trees in the distance here, you can see just how many times they change shape as you get closer, which can be pretty distracting. Otherwise, you'll get somewhat constant stuttering as you move from area to area. It's not game breaking, but when the game is locked at 30, you'd hope that performance would stay steady. Between Way of the Samurai 4 and Way of the Samurai 3, I'd love to be able to flat out recommend the 3rd game over the 4th. If you've already played and enjoyed Way of the Samurai 4, I think you'd most certainly have a good time with 3. For a new player, the game does a poor job of helping you along, something I felt that Way of the Samurai 4 did a bit better. That combined with the slight performance issues and visuals in general, I think maybe a new player would have a better time with the 4th game. That said, if you pick up the game, I'd recommend that you just go with the flow for the first few rounds. The game is meant to be replayed over and over, and you'll keep any weapons, money, or items that you've gathered for your next playthrough, even if you die. Once you feel that you're stuck or you can't find another story path, take a look at a guide or 2. I'll link one in the description in the video. Way of the Samurai 3 is priced at $20 or your regional equivalent. There is a bit of DLC on sale as well for use in customizing your character and adding a few more weapons to the game. Unfortunately, the Japan exclusive Plus content is not available. Thank you guys for watching. If you disliked this video, you know what to do. If you found it helpful, feel free to like the video or leave a comment, as both are appreciated.